Welcome to Manifest with Celeste. My name is Celeste Fiwaso. I'm a leadership and career coach, and I created this podcast to inspire you to dream big and pursue your dreams. I'm here with my dear friend and role model, Daryl Fairweather. We went to MIT together for undergrad. She went on to get her PhD from University of Chicago in economics. She was the first Black woman to earn her PhD in economics from the University of Chicago. She's now the chief economist at Redfin, and she's also the academic advisor counsel to the Dallas Federal Reserve Bank. And she also wrote this book, Hate the Game, where it uses economic concepts and principles to help you make life decisions and career decisions. So welcome, Daryl.
Thank you for having me. It's great to talk to you.
This podcast is really to help people dream big and to be inspired. And I feel like you're one of the most inspiring people I know because you just have a good knack of having a dream or having a goal and making it happen. So the first question I have for you is, what did you want to be when you grew up, like when you were a child?
I don't really remember having a really strong vision of what I wanted to be when I grew up. I think at one point when I was really little, I wanted to be an actress. So maybe that was speaking to my desire to be a performer or a communicator. I started to excel at math and science. So my parents started to encourage me to go into engineering, which is how I ended up at MIT because I thought that I was going to be an engineer. But in going to MIT, on the way there, I read this book called Freakonomics, and it introduced me to economics. And I've always been really interested in people, and economics helped me understand people, but with this really mathematical and logical framework. So I was very drawn to that. So that's how I transitioned away from engineering and into economics.
Okay, well, when you went to economics, did you have a dream of what was your career going to be?
I mean, I really looked up to Steve Levitt, who was one of the co-authors of this book, Freakonomics. He was a very public-facing economist. And when I went to the University of Chicago, he ended up being my academic advisor, my thesis chair. So I was definitely drawn to his career and wanted to emulate it. I have continued on that path of trying to emulate it, although the world is very different now than it was when he started his career. The media landscape has changed, what it means to be a public-facing economist has changed, so I feel like I am doing a different version of that, but he was definitely the first person that I looked to try to emulate.
Yeah, I think that's so crazy that you read his book. I think you were flying to MIT, and several years later, he became your advisor. So I think that's kind of crazy that this moment happened and it manifested into reality.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely was a guiding light. I mean, he went to MIT for graduate school, so knowing that he was at the same institution that I was at, it made me feel like it was more achievable. And then I got into the University of Chicago, which is where he is a professor. So, of course, I sought him out to be my advisor. So, yeah, it's funny how that all happened, but I think it just goes to show that if you have a vision and you pursue it, dreams can come true.
Yeah, I feel like it's a moment out of a movie or out of a storybook.
Yeah, true. Out of a book, out of my book.
Yeah. Well, now it's officially in your book. But a question I had was, okay, so was your dream to become if you had to put it in a single sentence, what would you say your dream was when you were in college and you decided you wanted to study economics?
I mean, I feel like when I was in college, I didn't really allow myself to dream that big. It was always just what's the next incremental goal that I'm trying to accomplish? I graduated in 2010, so that was during the Great Recession, and it was really hard to get any kind of a job back then. I remember applying for a lot of research assistant jobs, a lot of entry-level jobs, and not hearing anything back. And then I was also applying to graduate school at the same time. I think I always wanted to go to graduate school, but I wasn't sure if I was going to get into graduate school, so applying to those entry-level jobs was more of a backup plan, but those backup plans didn't even pan out, but the big goal of going to the University of Chicago did. So, I mean, that kind of goes to show that sometimes your bigger goals are actually more accomplishable than the backup plan. I definitely I've always been attracted to media. I grew up in LA. My mom worked in media, and it was kind of this also passion of mine, just in the background, that I was interested in those things. In my current job, I'm an economist that goes on TV, that goes on the radio. So I feel like it is like joining those two interests in a very satisfying way.
I feel like with your journey that it's been different threads weaving together. Like what you said, like, oh, I learned that I really like to understand people, discovered economics. I also had a past passion in media, and now that is incorporated in my current job. But you also said that you didn't have like a big dream when you were in college and you were kind of just taking one milestone at one milestone. And I think that's special because I think if me looking at your life out from the outside can feel like, oh, you always wanted to like be a chief economist and you just did all the steps to get there. But can you talk more about this process of like just focusing on one milestone versus going straight for like having clarity of a big dream? And the reason why I asked this question is I feel like a lot of people feel lost right now where they're like, oh my gosh, I don't even know what I really want to do. I just know I don't like where I'm at and I don't even know where to start.
Yeah, in the beginning of my career, it was really more about survival, which sounds, kind of like dramatic, but it was during the recession. Even after I graduated from grad school in 2014, it was still technically during the Great Recession. It was still a time where it was very difficult to get jobs. The unemployment rate was higher back then than it is now, and people complain about the unemployment rate right now. So it was just like for me, it was like, okay, what job can I get? What jobs do I have the most security in that I can get with my degree, that pay a good salary where I can afford the kind of lifestyle that I want? But then after getting a job like that, my first job out of grad school was in litigation consulting. It became very apparent to me that I was like pretty miserable in that job because the day-to-day of it was very grueling. It was long hours. It was a very perfectionist culture. And I just didn't feel like my skills were being utilized, and I was like trying to fit like a square peg into a round hole. It was just like it wasn't helping my self-esteem at all to be that square peg in a round hole. But one thing that I knew even before I got that job was like, okay, this is a job that I can get right now, but I'm going to still try to build my resume so I can get my next job. So when I was doing economic consulting, I tried to like seek out opportunities to do public speaking and to work on things that were with clients that were, clients that I would be interested in, so I could get that on my resume so that when I applied for my next job, I would have that on my resume. So it is like, I think about stepping stones. Like just because you don't like where you are right now, there are probably skills that you can get where you are that can set you up for the next job. And if you can't get those kinds of skills in your current job, you can still do other things like volunteer or have independent projects that can build your resume in a way that gets you to the next place where they're like, oh, you have worked on something like that before, so we will hire you. And I feel like that's what happened when I went to Amazon. They saw that I had this experience as an economist, that I had done like big projects that were very intensive, and they were looking for somebody like that, and it helped me get to that next place. And then once I was at Amazon, I continued to seek out public speaking opportunities and kind of build that skill that I wanted to do more of. I was ready when I was tapped to be chief economist at Redfin, that I already had some experience doing that kind of speaking.
And how did you figure out the next step? So you did consulting and then worked at Amazon. How did you know that was the right next step for you?
I did an informational interview with one of my friends from graduate school who was working at Amazon, and he had a lot more job hopping than I had. He had worked for like Yahoo and some other company. He had done some consulting before, so I talked to him and kind of got a lay of the land in terms of what all these jobs are like, and the way he described Amazon was appealing to me. It was like everything that my previous job wasn't. My consulting job, it was very much like micromanaged. I was very micromanaged. I was always expected to be in my desk. There were these really long hours and harsh deadlines, but the way he described Amazon was like the opposite, that you were expected to be autonomous. You were expected to set your own goals. No one was paying attention to how many hours you spent in your seat. So I was like, okay, that's everything that I hate about my job. It seems like this other job has. So that made me really confident to apply for that job. And then when I got it, it was just I just went and pursued it. It was in a different city. So I think like for a lot of people, that would have been a really big barrier to move cities, because I did move my husband. I moved my mom because my mom was living with me at the time, and I already owned a home in San Diego. Long story there, but I sold that home and moved just because to me, it was like I really needed a new start, and I wasn't going to be able to get a new start in the city that I was in, which was in San Diego.
When you were at Amazon and you were looking for new opportunities, were you looking to be a chief economist, or what was that process like, figuring out the next step from there?
When I was at Amazon, I really was hyper focused on getting promoted. I started as an economist and I wanted to become a senior economist. So like everything that I was doing there was really in the pursuit of getting that promotion, and I did end up getting promoted. It didn't really occur, like I didn't think a lot about what the next step would be like. Like I guess I'm pretty short-sighted, kind of myopic in that way, that I'm always just focused on like, okay, what's my next step as opposed to the long-term goal. But once I was promoted to senior economist, that's when a recruiter from Redfin reached out, because like going from senior economist at Amazon to chief economist of a smaller company, it was a leap, but it wasn't an outrageous leap for me to make at that time. There really aren't that many economists. I think like only a couple hundred PhD economists graduate every year, and even fewer from top programs, even fewer that live in Seattle that work for tech companies. And that's what Redfin was looking for at the time. They're looking for an economist from a top school, because this person like needed to have some reputation to be able to get on TV, and they wanted somebody who had a background in tech, because Redfin is also a tech company. So I knew going into it, like, okay, like who they're looking for is kind of a unicorn, and maybe I don't have 10 out of 10 characteristics because I was pretty junior just in terms of my experience, but I had like 8 out of 10, and I was pretty sure they weren't going to find 10 out of 10. So I just focused on like my strengths as opposed to my weakness of being young at the time.
I remember from your book that I think your boss at the time was discouraging you from taking this role and saying that you weren't ready. What made you feel confident in yourself and like brush off all that negativity or doubt from other people, or if there was any doubt within yourself?
Well, for one, I already had the offer in hand. Like it was almost like being gaslit, that she was telling me that I wasn't good enough to be the chief economist when I already had the offer in hand. And it just made me realize like, wow, people will kind of like, I don't know if lie is the right word, but like mislead you right to your face in their own interest. Because I think that she was just acting in her own interest. She didn't want me to quit because I was one of the top performers on her team, and it would make her job a lot harder if I did leave. And she was willing to like mess with my head just to get me to stay, but it didn't work. And it was also her own doing, because normally the way it works is that if a person leaves or has a higher offer somewhere else, Amazon would match that, but only if they're labeled as a top performer. But because when I was out on maternity leave, she downgraded me from top performer to just average performer. So she didn't even have like an avenue with which to try to keep me with more money. So the only way she could keep me would be to just like mess with my head and make me think that I was going to fail if I went to that job. But if anything, that just like clarified to me that this is not somebody that I want to be managed by, and I would rather just leave and take the risk.
Wow, that's crazy that you were clearly a top performer, but you were on mat leave and did not get the credit that you deserve. And unfortunately, I know that's common. Not like
Yeah,
way
it's
more
like out of
common.
sight, out of mind. She was new to being my manager too, so she barely even knew me. So I don't know. I don't like fault her for it, but at the same time, it's like there are consequences to your actions. Like you can't expect me to stay when you didn't fight for me in the first place.
Yeah, I feel like that happens a lot, that you don't get the recognition that you deserve until you're about to leave, and sometimes it's too little too late.
Yes, yeah, definitely.
I'm curious about your motivation throughout your career. You've achieved a lot, and wondering what was your why behind it all?
My grandmother was a famous black woman back in the day. She was the first black woman to be a licensed architect in New York State, and then she did it again in California, and she was the first black woman inducted into the American Institute of Architects, which is like this exclusive club of architects that are very prestigious. So growing up, I always had her as a role model, and I didn't pursue architecture. I think it was very impactful on just my mindset, because she always taught me that, you know, talent matters, hard work matters, and it doesn't matter if other people don't see that. What matters is that you have those qualities, and if you foster those qualities, it will take you far, even if other people don't see it initially. So she definitely encouraged me to pursue my studies, to like develop my talents, and to just kind of ignore the noise and just focus on developing my skills.
Yeah, your grandma sounds like a boss and amazing as a Black woman in that
Her
time
name is
period.
Norma Merrick Sklaric. I always forget to mention her name. I just call her my grandma, but people probably want to know her name. Norma Merrick
Yeah,
Sklaric.
like what time frame was she doing all these boss moves?
She went to Columbia. That's where she got her architecture degree in the 1950s. She got her architecture license in New York in 1954, and then her license in California, I think it was in 1960. So this was pre like Civil Rights Act. This was back when it was perfectly legal to discriminate against people because of their race and their gender. But she still accomplished all of this, and it really was based on her talent. Like her talent was so undeniable that she got these offers even amidst that time period.
Yeah, I mean, that's remarkable, especially before the civil rights movement. And I feel like in today's age, people may feel discouraged with what's going on and feel like there's a lot of things going against them. What advice would you give those people who feel discouraged because of their identity or what's going on in the world?
I think the best thing that you can do is to work on your self-confidence if you don't have that already. And I think the way that you develop self-confidence is by testing your abilities. So, doing things that are scary, challenging yourself to get skills that you maybe didn't think you could have. And like the more experiences you have where you're like, wow, I did something I didn't think I could do before, the more confidence that will instill in you just in your ability to learn and your ability to get new skills and your ability to figure things out. Because that's the kind of thing that nobody can take away from you. Whether you lose your job or you have a job, if you have those skills, I think you can still land on your feet and figure things out as an entrepreneur or find people who do value you. Don't let your self-worth be determined by external factors. It should come from something internal that you yourself have developed.
I have two questions for that. One is some people are afraid to fail and take risk, but you're saying you have to like put yourself out there. If you haven't done something before, you're ultimately going to make some mistakes. And so what advice would you give to people who are afraid to make mistakes but want to build these skills?
Yeah, so one thing I talk about in my book is status quo bias, which is that people tend to keep doing the same thing even when there might be better opportunities or better options out there. There's different reasons for this. One is the sunk cost fallacy, that losing something feels worse than gaining something of equal value. Sometimes it can be hurting behavior. Like if you're around people who are all staying put, it can be very difficult to break that social norm and try something different because everybody else is staying put. Like, why would you try something different that's scary? But I think like my advice for that is to, one, consider the opportunity costs. So that means like there is a cost associated with doing the same thing. You're missing out on opportunities. You never get to find out what you're capable of or what else is out there if you only do the same thing. And my other piece of advice is to try to step back and see things more objectively. Like if you could wipe the slate clean and think about like, would I rather choose option A, which is what I've been doing before, or choose option B, which I've never done before? Like what would you do if you didn't have all that baggage? I think that's how you can kind of break free of that status quo bias, because sticking with the status quo can be quite costly, but people don't really consider those costs because they're kind of on autopilot, just doing the same thing.
Yeah, that's a good tip because it can feel it's easy to just be in the default and like you don't love it, but like you're good enough in it versus doing something you've never done before.
And doing the same thing can be risky too. Like you can be at the same company and then that company can go bankrupt or you can get laid off. Like it doesn't mean doing the same thing is not always the safer choice, even if it feels like it's safer.
Yeah, and I feel like that's key right now with all the change that's happening in tech and AI. Like a lot of roles are getting eliminated and there's new technology.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think there's a lot of opportunity too, where you could be one of these people that's trying out these new technologies and learning new skills. But if you keep doing the same thing in a role that's soon to be automated, that can be actually the riskier thing to do.
Yeah, no, good advice. And the second thing I had was you talked about having like internal validation instead of external validation. And I feel like some people, when they're at work or in whatever environment, even when they're trying something new, they're getting some pushback from their boss or from their peers of being like, oh, this person really shouldn't be doing that because they haven't done this before. they don't have the skills yet. Like, what advice would you give to that person that's trying something new but feeling a lot of the growing pains and getting the negative feedback from their boss or other people?
I think you should take that external feedback with a grain of salt and try to think about like what are the motivations of the people that are giving you this feedback. Sometimes people will question your ambition because they don't have that same ambition. If they see you trying something different and new, it makes them feel inferior for not trying that new different thing. So sometimes that's a part of it. Sometimes your boss may not want you to go into a new field or get a new skill because they're afraid of losing you. Maybe they're coming from a place of being afraid of losing you, and that's why they're trying to keep you in a box because it's safer to keep you in that box. So whoever is giving you the feedback, I would just question, like, where is this really coming from? What is their actual motivation? And are they, like, how invested are they actually in your long-term success? I mean, sometimes even getting feedback from your parents are coming from a place that is based in their own experience, which is just outdated, and maybe they have the best intentions, but they just have outdated information. So I think you have to kind of filter all of this feedback that you're getting from people and take what you can out of it that's useful, but also discard the stuff that is just really a projection of their own insecurities or their own agendas.
Exactly. I think that's so important to emphasize because at the end of the day, you are the author of your life and you have to decide what direction it is going. And like you said, a lot of the feedback or comments that you get are a projection of other people's value systems or their anxieties or fears. So you have to have clarity within you. What are you trying to do and why is this important to you?
Absolutely.
Oh, do you have a story of when you were doing something new that was difficult and how you managed that situation?
And I was asked by a more junior professor to give a talk at a conference at the university. And, you know, usually graduate students don't speak at these conferences, but this particular professor, I shared my research with him. He liked it. He was like, oh, you should come present it. And then I told about it, and he was like, you should not do this. You're going to like fall flat on your face. You're going to fail. You're going to get like all these really hard questions. It's going to be really terrible. Like, don't do it. But I ignored him and did it anyway, and I did great. It was fine. It was a success. I think that he was giving me that advice because he had seen other people come out of those types of conferences and get really harsh feedback, and it was like too much for them, and it kind of like stilted their careers too early. So I think it was coming from a well-intentioned place, but at the same time, like I had this other feedback from a different professor encouraging me to do it. I felt like I could handle any criticism that came my way, so I did it anyway. So yeah, that's one example.
And you could easily have been like, well, they know best, they're an expert, and I'm just gonna sit this one out. And like, what gave you that confidence? I know you said that another professor believed in you, but like, how did you sort through that internally to have that conviction to do it?
I had done some presentations before at a much smaller scale to other students, and they had gone well. I felt like I had research that was good enough to present, so I had like that to fall back on. And I also just felt like, you know, if I was, at this time I wanted to be a professor, if I was going to be a professor, I would have to do something like this at some point, and that the earlier I did it, the better off I would be. So it was kind of like embracing that challenge early on. And to me, I think that's just a mindset that I always have. Like, I would just rather fail and know where I stand than to be afraid and not know where I stand in a situation.
Yeah, I think that is something that you do effortlessly, or I'm sure you put in like, I'm sure you cultivated that mindset over the years, but it's just something that I feel like you do so automatically and is ingrained in who you are, but is so hard for a lot of people.
Well, I think it really does go back to my grandmother. Like, she always told me this story about how when she was in elementary school, I think she was in middle school. There was this big test to test into the magnet high schools, and she got sick right before the practice test. She got appendicitis, so she was out of
Oh,
school
wow.
for months. So when the first time she took the practice test, she scored in like the 30th percentile of math. but then she went home and she studied independently, and then she came back and she tested in like the 98th percentile and tested into the top magnet high school, Hunter High School in New York City. And I think just hearing that story like over and over again from a very young age, it was like, okay, so you fail, but you can still go and study and like figure things out and come out on top. And I think that hearing that story so many times, it just became my mindset over time that like failure isn't that big of a deal. You can learn from your failure and you can overcome it.
Yeah, failure isn't the end point. It's just a moment and information that can help you to improve, to do better going forward.
Exactly.
Another question I had was, what beliefs did you have to let go in pursuing your dreams?
I think something that I struggled with really before writing my book, and I kind of like worked it through while I was writing my book, is that I was very achievement oriented. Like I felt like just getting accolades and getting achievements and going into top institutions or top companies was like the goal. And like as I've gotten older and as I have like gotten these achievements, it's made me realize that like isn't the goal. The goal is to enjoy what you're doing. I mean, obviously it's good to have like a safety net and to have a steady income so that you can afford all of the basic things you need in your life, but achievements aren't really what's going to make you happy. It is like what you're doing in the present moment that is going to make you happy. So now I focus less on like the achievements and try to focus more on the actual daily work that I'm doing and whether I'm enjoying that or not.
And you said it happened while you were writing the book, but I'm wondering like what was that turning point? Because I feel like that's a stark contrast from being achievement driven to making sure you just enjoy what you're doing.
I don't know if there was like a turning point. It was more that when I was writing my book, I had to think of myself more as a character because the book is like kind of part memoir and part economics book. So in the context of a story, like what is my arc and what are my character traits? And I realized that I fit into that Enneagram type 3, which I think you are too.
Yeah, I'm also in this transition phase of achievement to enjoyment.
Yeah, the anxious achiever. Learning about those Enneagrams and those personality types, it helped me realize like, oh, like if I do want to be a higher version of myself, I need to let go of that achievement orientation and focus more on internal goals as opposed to external goals and making sure that I'm not just chasing something external, that I am actually satisfied in my internal self. So I think writing just in general is a really great way to do that kind of self-examination. You don't have to write a whole book to do it. You could journal or you could just like write down your feelings, because I think writing stuff out really helps me process and helps a lot of people process.
Yeah, I agree. I journal a lot and it's so cathartic and have learned a lot about myself through the process.
Absolutely.
Have you noticed a difference between being achievement oriented to enjoying just the process and what you're doing? Have you noticed a difference in your emotions or personality?
Yeah, I feel like it makes me less easily manipulated. When I was more achievement oriented, I think it was easier to manipulate me because somebody could just come in and say like, here's a trophy, go after that trophy. And I would just go after it because it's like, ooh, shiny trophy, let me go after the trophy. And now that doesn't work on me anymore because it's like, you can't like tempt me with these trophies. I'm going to keep doing what I want to do. So I think that helps me stay grounded. It helps me get less distracted and helps me like be less manipulated.
And what is it that you want to do? Like, what are the things that you're focusing on and driving you now?
I mean, what I enjoy doing, just like my daily work, is I really do like economics. Like I got a whole PhD in it, so it really is something that I enjoy learning about and talking about. I enjoy educating other people about it and teaching them what I've learned about economics, and that is a big part of my job. Like I said before, I really do enjoy studying media, so just kind of keeping a pulse on what's being talked about in the media, how people are communicating, and how I fit into that. I find that very interesting. Yeah, so I think I think that I'm most happy when I'm able to combine my passions of like economics and also do it in this creative fashion that puts things out into the world, and media is definitely a part of that.
I love all your clips. I mean, obviously I'm your close friend, so I'm biased, but I think They are so essential because a lot of people don't understand economics, or maybe they do understand but they're not immersed in it. And I feel like you do such a great job of breaking it down into simple terms and, like you said, using whatever is happening in the world today and how should that impact your decisions. So I just want to say thank you
Thank
for all
you.
your content.
Thank you. It's easy, like when I'm putting stuff out into the world, whether it's like on TikTok or LinkedIn or whatever, it's like very tempting to pay attention to the metrics, like how many people liked it, how many people viewed it. But getting feedback like that, I think it's much more satisfying to me, because otherwise I might get caught into that same rat race of like, oh, I'm just going to chase likes and engagement, and then I will end up making content that I don't actually resonate with. So I'm glad that, even the content that doesn't go viral is still resonating with real people.
Obviously, I know you and trust you, but you have a PhD in economics from a top institution and you know your stuff. So I feel there's already more credibility in your advice or how you're seeing the market than, whatever article that's just like written by a journalist that doesn't have an economics background or PhD and is, could be persuaded by their own fear and anxiety.
Yeah, it's interesting. Actually, I talk to a lot of journalists. They call me up and they ask me for advice on their pieces. So the ones who do that, you can trust them when they actually talk to the experts.
Yeah, I'm not sure who's all talking to it, and also rather hear it directly from the economists themselves.
Good point.
But you were talking about your book earlier, and this podcast is about dreams and making them come true. I feel like there's a connection between dreams and your book. Could you talk more about what that connection is?
Well, my book really is about how to achieve your goals, but framing it in like an economic lens. I mean, the book is called Hate the Game, and I think that if you start to view your goals as games, they become less scary. It's not like about failure, it's just about playing the game and seeing how far you get. Like when you play a board game with your friends, it's not a big deal if you lose. You just tried your best, but you're still able to execute a strategy. You're still trying to win. But I think it makes the stakes a bit lower, and then you can start to see things as being more game-like. Like you have to develop a strategy, you have to make certain moves, you have to think about what the other player is going to do. And I think seeing things that way makes things more achievable, and also for me it makes things more fun, because games are supposed to be fun, right? So that's the basic gist of the book. I try to break down how to win at games using game theory, which is a subfield of economics, and I also incorporate a lot of other aspects of economics, economic research, to help contextualize, like, why is it so hard to get a job as an entry-level worker? Why is it so hard to negotiate a raise as an entry-level worker? How can you negotiate? How can you advance in your career? What are the things you need to think about when going out on maternity leave or any type of leave? All that is in the book, and all those things can be very scary and I think emotional too, because people wrap up so much of their identity in their career achievements. But I think when you break it down as a game, it becomes a little bit less scary and a little bit more just achievable for people. So that's my hope.
And what made you use the title Hate the Game?
It comes from this expression, Black American expression of don't hate the player, hate the game, which I feel like is a mindset that is really useful in a corporate environment, because yes, the economy is unfair, corporate America is unfair, but that's just the way it is, and you shouldn't hate yourself for trying to win at these unfair games. You should just approach it as, I'm trying to play, I'm trying to develop a strategy, and if I know the rules to the game, that makes it all the more easy to win. And knowing the rules basically is knowing economics. If you know economics, then you can kind of foresee how things will play out, and you can start to understand, like, this is why some people are advancing faster, some people are advancing slower, and you can try to implement strategies that will make you one of the people that's advancing faster in the world.
I feel like right now people may feel that the game is changing, or they're not sure what the game they're playing with AI and tariffs and everything that's happening. What advice would you give people who are like, things are changing so fast, so quickly, I don't even know what to do?
Yeah, I think that things are changing, but with some economic knowledge, you can start to see that there is a pattern to how things are changing. The tasks and the types of jobs that are going away are jobs that are very rote, the kinds of things that a computer can easily learn and replicate. But the kind of work that will always be around is the kind of work that is cutting edge, the kind of work that nobody has done before, because you can't replicate something that's ever been done before. Other types of work that won't be going away are things that require human-to-human interaction, navigating conflict, navigating multiple priorities. That's not something that a machine will ever be able to weigh in on. It's something that requires decision-making that only humans have. So my advice right now is to focus on those things that cannot be replaced by AI. Also, learn how to use AI so that you're not bogged down by these rote tasks that somebody else that you're competing against has already figured out how to do very quickly because they're using AI. It's an exciting time because there's a lot of new opportunities out there. And if you're one of these people that embraces that uncertainty and, is able to market yourself as somebody who can do the things that AI can't do, then I think that there are opportunities to really advance your career quite quickly when things are changing like this.
That's great advice. And I was thinking about you saying doing new things that haven't been done before because it can't be replicated. What are those new things?
It depends on what field you're in. But let me think if I can think of a specific example. So I'll just give an example from economic research because that's what I know right now. So it used to be that a very easy path to go on if you graduated from college with an economics degree is to go be a research assistant. And a lot of the tasks that research assistants are doing are now able to be done by AI, like cleaning data, even analyzing data, coding. AI is able to do a lot of that. But what's going to end up happening is that kind of research is going to become very cheap because anybody can do it, and the kind of research that's going to be more expensive, more highly valued, will be research on data sets that nobody had access to before. So being the kind of person that goes out into the real world and collects data that the AI hasn't had a chance to even read yet, that's going to be very valuable. Or being the kind of person that is good at formulating questions and defining a problem, that's going to be very valuable. The AI can solve the coding problem, but it can't define the problem in the first place. And that involves understanding the needs of your manager, the needs of the company you're working for, or the research needs that wherever they are. It's translating that into an actionable problem. That step is still going to be done by a human. So that's just one example, but if you gave me more different fields, I could try to spitball what would be replaced and what wouldn't be replaced.
I think that was applicable to everything of being the person that's getting the net new data or information that has not been collected before and framing the problem that you're trying to solve. And those can be applicable to any industry.
Yeah, and I guess another example is in journalism, right? AI can, if I go to ChatGPT right now, I can say, write me an article about, I don't know, let's say the effect, what the big beautiful bill will do to the economy. The reason AI can do that is because there are many other articles that have done that before. But, if there's something happening in your community that nobody knows about, that has never been written about before, you can still be the first person to write about it and do something that AI can't do. AI can't show up to your local town hall meetings and understand what's going on the ground. It doesn't understand until somebody inputs that into data that exists. So I think being a real person in the world and understanding how things actually work in a way that a computer can't is going to be very valuable.
Yeah, I feel like that's eye-opening. It sounds obvious, but it's just take advantage of being a human and being out there and feel the world and see what's actually happening.
Yeah, definitely.
A little bit of a pivot, but wanted you to give advice to people who feel like their dreams are too scary or too big. What advice would you give them to pursue their dreams?
I think that the first thing I would want to know is what makes it scary. If your dream is to become an Oscar-winning actress, that is a very big dream, a very scary dream, and it is kind of a dangerous dream. I wouldn't tell you to go to Hollywood and start auditioning for roles with no backup plan to try to pursue something like that. But I'm guessing more what you're talking about is it's scary to quit your job and start a new job, or it's scary to quit your job and become an entrepreneur. And in that case, it's probably not as scary as you think. So getting data on the actual odds, I think, can be reassuring to people. How many people have succeeded in this? What is is that an amount of risk that you're willing to take on? My other piece of advice is just just try things. Like you can always go back to whatever it was you were doing, but if you give yourself a time frame, like I'm going to try something new for a year, then I think it can feel less scary. At least it gives you the chance to learn something. You're going to learn new skills trying something new that you can apply no matter what you do. I think gaining skills in and of itself is a worthy goal. So failure isn't always failure if you're learning something.
I think it goes back to being outcome driven or process driven, where if you let failure define everything, then yes, it's going to be very scary. But if you actually see it as like a process to gain skills, regardless if it's successful or you go back to a corporate job, that it's still valuable.
Right, like even with writing my book, like a lot of people would be afraid to write a book. Like, what if it doesn't sell any copies? What if people hate it? Yada, yada, yada. So when writing it, I tried to just make my goal to write a book that I personally was proud of, that I personally would enjoy reading. And then it was just like, I can achieve this goal regardless of what happens when the book is out in the world. And I felt like I was a success even before the book was published just because I knew I had something that I was proud of.
That's sinking into my head of that's a good way to frame things. Like, am I proud of my effort or the work or the deliverable? Like me only, am I proud of that versus am I going to sell millions of books, or what are people going to think about these books?
Yeah, exactly. That you can't control. People are always going to have bad reviews. There'll always be haters.
And especially in the age of AI and bots, that they're
Yeah,
even just generated,
it's,
not real haters.
it's so true.
Any final advice that you would give to people in pursuing their dreams and encouraging them to dream big?
It's another thing for my book is that I have this framework of options. Like you have your inside option, which is a status quo, and your outside option, which is what else you could be doing besides that inside option. And I think a lot of times people don't explore their options. They don't give themselves enough credit for how many options they truly have out there. So I think even if you're satisfied with your job, you should still be thinking about like, well, what am I not doing right now? What else is out there for me that I might regret one day not even exploring, and just like opening yourself up to the wide possibilities of what could be out there, because the world is very large, and I think people tend to see themselves from just like a very narrow perspective, like what's going on in their office or what's going on with their peer group, and there's so much more out there to be seen.
As you were saying that, I just had this visual of having tunnel vision of like one specific light color when there's a spectrum of different lights and possibilities out there. And you just have to open yourself up to all of them.
Yeah, and I think sometimes that can be very daunting because, like I said, like I think the really big goals can feel very scary, but you only have to take one step to get out of your comfort zone and just focus on that one step that you can take that can expand your worldview.
I've talked to a lot of people about this, like through coaching, and people feel overwhelmed by all the options. So they go from like, okay, I am going to open myself up, but there's so many options. I have so many interests. There's a finite amount of time. What if I spend too much time, like 2 years, doing something that I'm actually not interested in, and then have to start over again? What would you say to those people?
I think it requires some introspection. I think that if you lay all your options out, there's probably one that is special. It might be special because it's the most scary, and maybe it's the most scary because it's the one that you really actually care about. So I think you just have to like really get to know yourself and examine those feelings. Like, am I scared because it's something that I don't want to do, or am I scared because it's something that I really do want to do, but I'm just kind of afraid to admit that to myself?
Yeah, I see that so many times that deep down people really know what they want to do, but it's this fear and anxiety that's holding them back and making them complacent with the status quo and not truly opening themselves to explore or like test it out or do experiments to see, can I do this? What am I learning? Do I want to do this? And build on one thing after another.
I remember when I was first considering writing a book, anytime I would like bring it up or talk about it out loud, like my heart would start to race. And I was like, okay, that's like a pretty big sign that I should listen to, that this is something that actually is very important to me and I should take it seriously.
Yeah, I'm so glad you shared that because I'm a big believer that your body and emotions shine light. Like they're like alarms when you're like, oh, I feel scary. Like even opening myself up to it, or if I did tune into it, I'm like, I actually would be happy if I could guarantee that success. And I feel like there's signs there that you just have to tune into.
Absolutely, yeah. Listen to your body. And
Yeah,
if you're in a
yeah.
job and you're like, I remember when I was on my consulting job, I had like the worst acne of my entire life. And that should have been a sign. Like if I'm breaking out every day, like my body is trying to tell me something. So definitely listen to your body knows.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I've definitely felt times where it's like feeling groggy constantly, even though I was getting all the hours of sleep I needed. I think that was telling my body that it was rejecting what was happening to me.
For sure.
Well, the final question I want to ask you, and something I want to ask all guests, is let's say there's a billboard and you get to encourage people to pursue their dreams. What would you put on that billboard?
What would I put on the billboard? I think I would put believe in yourself. That's it. Very simple. Just believe. You can do it. I don't know. Is that too basic?
No, I love it. That's what I'm looking for is
Okay.
a simple phrase. And just to build off of that, again, I feel like sometimes a lot of people struggle with having that belief. What words do you want to leave with them when they're like, okay, that's easy said than done, Daryl. Believe in yourself. Like, how?
Like I said before, you believe in yourself by proving it to yourself, you know? Like if you are afraid to swim, maybe you don't know how to swim, believe that you are capable of learning how to swim. Like, of course, you're not going to know how to swim the first time you get in the pool, but if you take lessons, if you commit to it, if you do it every day, over the course of a summer, you will know how to swim. So I think all skills are like that. You can get them, you can get the skills. You can't control whether or not you're going to be like an Olympic swimmer or not, obviously, but you can learn how to swim.
Yeah, it's a whole growth mindset. Like, believe that you're able to grow, you're able to learn. And
Yes.
I admire that so much about you is I feel like you live those things and they're so ingrained in default in your brain that it makes sense why you're successful because you've just had that mentality to overcome all the different challenges.
I try to spread that around to other people. So if you need reminders of that, I would say get my book. And yeah, I think like there's self-belief, but there's also understanding the way the world works, how skills grow, all of that I think can help. So hopefully my book can help people understand the context too with which you can move through the world.
How can people get to hear more from you? Where should they follow you at?
I'm on all the social channels. I post my videos everywhere, whether that's TikTok, Instagram, LinkedIn, Substack. I still have a Twitter account, Blue Sky. So I'm on all the places, so you can just pick one. Usually my handle is at Fairweather PhD, but you can just search for Daryl Fairweather and it will pop up.
Great. Well, I always feel inspired by you, and I'm so happy that you are my guest here so that you can spread that inspiration to other people.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. And, I'm happy that you're my friend, so we get to do this.
Yeah, me too. Well, thank you so much, and stay tuned, everybody. I'm going to have more stories from people to inspire you to dream big. And yes, believe in yourself, like Daryl said.
Thanks.